Alright, good morning, class. Today we're going to go over some lesson 16. But before we go over that, on a little warm up, I want you guys to copy down these 3 problems. Actually, let's make it 4. I'm going to have you guys turn in some of these notes, so make sure you guys are taking notes. I know some of you guys are slacking. I do want to remind you guys that you guys need to make sure you turn in everything before I come back. I'm not going to let you guys know when I'm coming back, but it's your job to make sure you spend this week trying to get as much things that you, if you're missing something, make sure you get those things in. Because if I come back and then you haven't got those in and you try to get those in later, you can only get half your points. You can still get full points if you try to get it in sometime this week. Alright, so again, make sure you guys are taking notes. Again, you guys got more assignments this week. Alright, so go ahead and copy those 4 problems down on a line paper. Or you want to do it on the very top of lesson 16, you can. If there's some like white space up there for you to write those down. Write those 4 problems down. And spend a minute just getting the answers to those. And actually, real quick, if you haven't yet, I don't know if I've shown you guys this, but use this little strategy, right? I think I have. If you remember the rules for multiplying positives and negatives, that's good. If you're struggling, you can use this little picture here. It's kind of like it's a triangle with 2. You think those are like the eyes, and that's the mouth. Two negative signs up top and a positive one on the bottom. So the way you use this is, if you look at number 1, one number is negative, right? And one number is positive. So what that means is you could cover up a negative, cover up this negative, and the second number is positive. So I cover up that positive. What's left? A negative sign, right? So that means we know our answer is going to be negative. So we just do 4 times 5 is 20, but it's going to be negative 20. Using that right there. And if you remember the rule, if for multiplying and dividing, it's different from adding, right? If you got one of each, if you got a positive and negative, no matter what, your answer is going to be negative. It doesn't matter which one's bigger and stuff. I know that matters when you're adding, but not when you're multiplying. So number 2 here, you got one of each sign, right? A positive and a negative. So hopefully you know it should be negative, and if not, here you can do it. The first number is positive, you cover the positive. Second number is negative, cover up the negative. What's left? A negative. So your answer is going to be negative 4. Number 3 here, let's see what happens if they're both negative, right? So here I will cover up both negative signs. What we got left? A positive sign. So that means your answer is going to be positive. What's 16 divided by 4? Positive 4. Same thing with the last one. Negative 8 times negative 2. They're both negative. Cover up both negatives. Your answer should be positive, because that's the thing that's left in the triangle. So hopefully you guys remember the rule also. If you're multiplying or dividing 2 numbers of the same sign, either both positive or they're both negative, the answer is going to be positive no matter what. I know that one's tricky. So keep this information in mind. Now we're going to look at lesson 16. So the first problem below says evaluate the expression below. Let's see. So here, what you could do is you could kind of work with just do one at a time. Here you do negative 6 times 2. Remember, positive times negative is a negative. Negative 12. Then actually pause the video and try to see if you can finish this up on your own. Alright, so hopefully you guys maybe got the answer. So let's see what happens. Let's see what we're going to get when we keep going. Negative 2 times negative 5 will get you positive 10. Remember, negative times negative is positive. And I can just bring down to negative 3. There's times in between all of them, right? So then we're just really just going to multiply the rest of them. You can multiply left to right if you want, but if you remember for multiplication, you could actually choose which numbers you want to multiply. I'm going to multiply these two first, and I'll tell you why in a second. It's negative 12 times a negative 3. Gives you positive 36. Remember, negative times negative is positive. Then make sure you bring down that 10. The reason I want to leave that 10 at the end is because when you have a big number, it's easy to multiply by 10. If you multiply anything by 10, or any whole number by 10, you're going to add a 0 to it, right? So we get 360 as our final answer there. Make sure you guys got that written down. And question B says, what type of strategies were used to evaluate this expression? You might have not used it, but what I just talked about, right? Choosing certain numbers to multiply first to make the problem easier. Let's write that down. So the strategy we used was choosing certain numbers to multiply first to make the multiplication easier. So remember, you don't always have to multiply left to right. You can if you want. Question C, we can skip that one for now. You can just put X on it. Question D says, what is the sign of the product and how was the sign determined? So remember, the product is the answer to the multiplication problem, right? It said, what was the sign? So looking back at the problem, what was the answer? Was the answer positive or negative? It was positive, right? I just have to go back and check. And how do we know that? We kind of just did multiply each number out and see if it's going to be positive or negative at the end. But I want to show you guys a different strategy we could use. So, right here, what happens if I multiply two negatives? We get a positive, right? And then let's say we bring that, you guys don't got to write this down, just follow along. We're going to bring that 2 down, that's positive, right? What happens if I multiply these two negatives? It's positive. So you notice how here, what happens when you're going to multiply 3 positive numbers? Well, positive times positive is positive. Bring down that positive. It's positive times positive. Positive. So what happens to all the negative numbers? If you look back up here, if I did a negative times a negative, they cancel each other out and turn a positive, right? Same thing there. So how do you know if your answer is going to be positive or negative? So right here, again, the answer was positive because when you had a negative number, you always had another negative number to multiply with to cancel it out and turn it positive. Right there also, right? So what can we say? If you have an even amount of negatives, let's think of what even number is. Let's say, is this even? How many got there? 2, 4, 6, 8. That's even, right? So if you have an even amount of negative numbers, they're going to cancel out and just turn positive. But let's say what happens if we had an odd amount? Let's say we had 3 negatives. These two multiply and become a positive, right? But then you still got this negative over here. And what's a positive times a negative? A negative, right? So here I'll write out the answer for part D. So if you have an even amount of negative numbers, the product, remember the product is the answer to the multiplication problem, right? The product will be positive. Okay, because if you have an even amount, you always have one negative number that pairs up with another negative to become positive. But if you have an odd amount of negatives, the answer will be positive, or the answer will be negative. So give you guys a few seconds to write that down. All right, so let's see. Moving on to the next part. So I'm gonna have you guys go ahead and try to do this problem. Exercise 1. You could remember multiplication. You could choose. You could just multiply it left to right if you want. If you wanna try to multiply certain numbers first, you can do that also. But actually, before that, let's try to think. Looking at these numbers, is the answer gonna be positive or negative? So remember, we could try to figure out how many negatives there are, right? There's 1 negative here. There's 2. There's 3. Is 3 an even or odd? It's odd, right? So if it's an odd amount of negatives, your answer is going to be negative. And again, the reason here is once you multiply these two out, they become positive, but this one doesn't have anything to multiply with another. There won't be another negative number for that -2 to multiply with to turn positive. All right, you guys go ahead and try to do that problem on your own. All right, so here, let's go over a way to do this. If you did it differently, but still got the right answer or the same answer, that's fine. So -1 times -3 is +3, right? Negative times negative is positive. I could do 10 times -2 is -20. Drop down that 2. I'm going to do 3 times -20. Negative times positive is negative. It's -60 times +2. Negative times positive is negative, so we get -120, all right? So you guys got that. All right, let's look at the next problem. Now this one's a little tricky because it throws in some fractions. Let's see. All right, so right here I could choose to do 4 times 1/3, but I'm not going to do that. We're going to do, remember, with multiplication, I can multiply any numbers first in any order I want. I'm going to multiply the 1/3 and the 9 first. And I'm going to do that on the side. I'm going to show you guys why. We're at the 9 first. 9 times 1/3. You notice how the 3 goes into 9, right? 3 goes into 9 3 times. And right here, that's it. If I turn 9 to 9/1, that's what we got to do when we multiply fractions. Cross cancel the 3 and the 9. And get 3. Again, notice out here, 9 divided by 3 is 3. That's kind of a little shortcut. So I multiply those, I get 3. Next, I'm going to multiply the -8 and the -1/2. Again, turn that -8 to -8/1. I can cross cancel here also, right? 2 goes in 2 once, 2 goes in 8 4 times. And again, you notice a little pattern here. What's 8 divided by 2? It's 4. Let's see if we get 4. Multiply straight across, we get 4/1 or just 4. So we do, right? And again, negative times negative is positive. That's why that's 4. So again, I want to show you guys a little shortcut. I can multiply 8 times 1/2 with 2 on the bottom, right? You multiply a whole number with 1 over something, you're basically just doing 8 divided by that bottom number. 8 divided by 2 is 4. And don't forget that 4 in front. Now I could just do 4 times 3 is 12 times that 4. Yeah. 48. So hopefully you guys got the hang of that. Alright, so let's just revisit that question. Or right here it says, what terms did you combine first and why? So looking back at the problem, I multiplied the numbers, the fraction with the whole number, the 1/3 and the 9 first because it gets us a nice easy whole number, right? Let's think about what would happen if I do 4 times 1/3. This part you guys don't gotta write down. But if I did 4 times 1/3, I do 4 over 1 and we get 4 over 3, right? That leaves us with another fraction, which is hard to work with. So remember, we like working with whole numbers, so what we did here was we chose to multiply the 1/3 of the 9 first because we know that would get us a whole number. You're basically just doing 9 divided by 3 is 3. That's where that 3 is. So let's write the answer to this real quick. We chose to multiply the numbers that would get rid of the numbers that would get rid of fractions. Because we don't like working fractions, right? Alright, so let's see. Alright, so let's see. Looking at the next problem. Right here, so you rewrite the mixed number as a sum, then multiply using the distributive property. So remember we talked about this previously. I could rewrite that mixed number, the 5 into, or 5 1/3 into 5 plus 1/3, right? Okay, so right here I have that 6 in front, right? When you have a whole number in front, or when you have a number in front of parentheses, remember what that means is it's going to multiply with everything on the inside. So you got to do 6 times -5 first. I'm going to write it on the side. I want you guys to write it also. For -6 times +5. That's -30, right? So we got a -30 there. Then we got to do the -6 times 1/3. And remember what we talked about earlier. If you're multiplying a whole number with something or 1 over something, a whole number times 1 over something, you're basically just doing 6 divided by the bottom number. 6 divided by 3 is 2, right? So let's just do it out real quick. Right here, I could cross cancel. 3 goes in 3 once, 3 goes in 6 twice. And then we get -2 over 1, which is just -2. So again, that number 6 in front multiplies with everything on the inside. Now we can go ahead and add those two up. 30 plus -2 is -32. Alright, so then I want you guys to see if you guys do that next problem. Or start off at least. See how far you guys can get. Alright, so right here we're going to go ahead and break apart that -3.5 just like before, and it becomes -3 plus half, right? Nope, not half. Remember, if we're breaking apart a negative mixed number, both parts got to be negative. And then you put that 9 in front. So then the 9 is going to multiply with both things on the inside, right? 9 times -3, -27. Then 9 times -half. Again, we're multiplying a whole number with something, or 1 over something. That's basically just doing 9 divided by 2, right? Some of you guys might know what that is. But if not, that's okay. We'll do it out because it's not going to get a whole nice easy number. I can't cross cancel the 2 and the 9, so let's just multiply straight across. 9 times 1 is 9. 1 times 2 is 2. But don't forget that negative. Then here, you got 9 over 2, right? You could turn to a mixed number. Yes. Yeah, we could turn to a mixed number. How many times is 2 going to 9? 4 times, right? So we put 4 there. 2 times 4 is 8. Don't forget a negative in front. 2 times 4 is 8. We subtract, we get 1. So remainder 1. That means it's negative 4 and 1 over 2. Remember, when you turn improper fraction to a mixed number, you put, see how many times 2 goes to 9, which is 4. And then it's remainder 1, so 1 goes on top. The bottom number stays the same. So here, I got 2 negative numbers. I could just combine them now. Negative 27 plus negative 4 is negative 31. Don't forget the half. Alright, so make sure you guys got that. Pause the video if you guys are still writing that down. Alright, so we got 3 more problems to do, and then we'll stop after that. Right here it says evaluate using the distributive property. Don't worry about that. So, before we go over that problem, I want you guys to write down what PEMDAS. Remember, that's the order of operations. That tells us that I got to first, when there's a problem that has a lot of different operations, I got to do what's in parentheses first, then exponents, then multiply or divide, then add or subtract. So that means I got to multiply. In this problem, I got to multiply or divide before I can do any addition or subtraction, right? So I can't add anything with that. I can't add that until I multiply those two. So I'm doing 16 times negative 3 over 8. Got to do 16 over 1. Okay, we cross cancel. Yeah, 8 goes in 8 once, and 8 goes in 16 twice, right? Multiply that out, we get, what's 2 times negative 3? Negative 6, and on the bottom is 1s. We could put negative 6 over 1, but we don't really got to do that, right? We could just put negative 6. Then over here, 16 times 1/4 turns to 16 to 16 over 1. Again, you're doing 16 times 1 over something. So you're basically just doing 16 divided by 4. But let's do it out for practice. 4 goes in 4 once, and 4 goes in 16 4 times. Then, so that means we just get 4 here. So notice how I multiplied these two, got negative 6, multiplied these two, I got 4. Now we can add, right? We can only add after we multiply. Negative 6 plus 4 is what? Negative 2. Remember, when you're adding different signs, you do the bigger one, which is 6, take away the smaller one, 4. But since the bigger one is negative, the answer is going to be negative. Alright, so example 4. Alright, actually, before we look at that example, I'll go over a couple things. You guys can write this on the side. You guys remember, so this problem has division, right? So I want to go over what happens when we're dividing fractions. Remember, keep, change, flip. You keep the first one the same. You change the multiply, you flip the second one. Like that. So here, so keep that in mind for this problem. Whenever you see a division sign, we're going to change the multiplying. So I'm going to rewrite this problem the same. 1, change the division to multiplication. Then flip the one after that. 2/3 now becomes 3/2. And I'll just write everything else the same for now. But then we got another dividing, right? So we change it to multiplication. But what do we got to do there? We got to flip the number after, right? Just like we did over here. So when we see division, we turn to multiplication, then we flip that fraction. So negative half now becomes a negative 2 over 1, which is just the same thing as a negative 2, right? Alright, so now it's all multiplication. We can just multiply left to right if you want, or if you see certain numbers you want to multiply first, you could do that. Here, what's 1 times 3 halves, or 3 over 2? Remember, anything times 1 is just itself, so I'll keep that the same. Right here, negative 8 times 3, negative times positive, negative 24. Bring down that negative 2. I'm going to multiply these two whole numbers first. Negative times negative, 24 times 2 is positive 48. Times 3 over 2. Turn that 48 to 48 over 1. Then I'm going to have to cross cancel, right? 2 goes in 2 once. 2 goes in 24, or 48, 24 times. Then you can multiply 24 times 3 is 72. So that's a little complicated. Let me just go over again real quick. So if we got a bunch of multiplication and division, you can change the dividing into multiplication. But when you do that, you got to flip that fraction that's after the division sign. And I'm going to keep change flip. Alright, last problem. Let's do the same thing here. We got multiplication and division, right? I'm going to just work with this dividing first. We 4.2 times negative 1/3. Change dividing to multiplying. Then flip that 1/6 to 6 over 1, or just 6. And again, this problem here, I can multiply left to right, but it's going to be a lot easier if I choose which certain numbers to multiply first. I'm going to do these two first. I want you to think about why. Why did I want to do negative 10 times 4.2? The decimals are kind of hard to work with, right? Except the rule is whenever you multiply a number with a decimal by 10, all you do is you move the decimal over by 1. So that 4.2, where's that decimal going to be? It's going to now move over to the right by 1, become 42, right? But it's a positive times a negative, so it's going to be negative 42. Then on the side, we're going to do 1/3 times 6, or negative 1/3 times 6. Turn that 6 to 6 over 1. Cross cancel the 3 and the 6. What do we get? Negative 2 over 1, or just negative 2. And we're multiplying those two now, right? What's a negative times a negative? Positive. 42 times 2 is 48. Alright, so we're going to stop there. Make sure you guys got all this written down. And make sure you turn in the notes I asked you guys to in the Google Classroom. Alright, have a good rest of your day.